Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Afi. Today we have a video that's going to be about lessons that I've learned in my faith journey, and maybe I'll just explain a bit of where that came from and stuff like that. But anyway, so the first lesson is that God exists whether or not I believe in Him. And this one was like, and the reason why it's number one is because it was very, very important to me. And I think it's what actually propelled me to be like, okay, let me be intentional about my faith and let me just, like dive into God's word and stuff like that. Because like I thought about it, and it was a situation where I did philosophy in my first year of university. And in philosophy, we were learning about the history of the philosophers and all the stuff that they said and stuff like that. And we found that most philosophers basically like came to a conclusion of a first cause, and they all talked about a first cause. They didn't call the first cause God, and they didn't know whether it was material or immaterial, but they all reached a conclusion that there was a first cause. And that was so important to me because when we were learning philosophy, we weren't coming from a spiritual background. It was just philosophy, like that was it. It was just the study of asking questions and learning stuff. And so that's what was happening. And for us to reach that conclusion, even without like using faith, was so important because it's like even if you don't believe in faith, even if you don't believe in like a religion and you don't believe in Christ and you don't believe, in God, then you go through philosophy, and philosophy still brings you back to a first cause, and you realize that like it's a bit ignorant to think that God doesn't exist. um and I'm not even saying it to be rude and stuff like that, but I'm just saying it to show that it's one of those things where like God exists whether or not you choose to believe, and at the end of the day you're going to answer to all the decisions that you make. Yeah, so that was the first message that I got. And then the second thing was about the spirit and how the spirit grows. And I just learned that the spirit basically like it's like it grows through like all the stuff that you do on earth. And when you do stuff, and when you like pray, and when you basically just live a life of attendance to God, your spirit is growing. And that was so important in me actually making the decision to live a life of attendance. Also, let me just say that there could be a bit of noise in the background. Today, everyone is awake, but anyway, we'll just get to it. Um, the next thing that I learned was about just forming relationships with people and even friendships, and just having like ties with people. And I just learned about being intentional about that, like not just being friends with everybody. And even if you want to be friends with everybody, like that, not everyone has access to your heart, just so that you can guard your heart, because guarding your heart is so important. And more than that, even you don't want to create ties with people that are going to lead you into like the wrong thing, or are going to lead you nowhere. Sometimes like there's a clear indication that this relationship or friendship, or this, this tie that you're trying to form here is really going to lead to your destruction, but you do it anyway. And so for me, it was so important to learn that like not everyone deserves to know me like that. And more than that, I need to be more intentional with the people that I'm letting know about me, because I'm the kind of person who loves to tell, who just talks, like I can just say anything about myself. Sometimes I don't, like sometimes it's like it should be a secret, but it's not to me sometimes. And I talked about that in my vulnerability video, so if you haven't watched that, I'm going to link it. I'm going to leave it up here on the eye. And yeah, so I talk about like the vulnerability and stuff like that, and just being able to say things about myself. And if I'm not careful with who I'm telling things, then sometimes I'm forming ties with people, I'm forming connections, and causing this relationship where we have to talk every single day, and putting so much pressure on myself to maintain this, when it's not really feeding my spirit, and it's not good for my spirit. So I learned about just being more intentional about the friendships that I have, and being more intentional with my friends, and the things that, and the things that I say, and the people that I talk to and stuff like that. And that has helped me so much, to be honest, because I've just learned to like walk away. And I've also learned like you don't really owe anyone anything. And so feeling guilty about like some things, it's just not necessary. Maybe I'll talk about that later. But That's one of the things that I learned as well. Um, and then there's the other thing that I learned. I think this is the fourth lesson. I Yeah, I think it's the fourth. The fourth thing that I learned is just about like the power of prayer, and coincidences. And I was just for so long, like I would be like, oh yeah, it's just a coincidence. That just happened. It just happened. But then you realize that like God puts certain people in your life for a reason. God makes you go to a certain place for a reason. Sometimes you have no intention of doing something. And then all of a sudden it's happened and you're just like, what led me here? And it's like, and sometimes it's a good thing. It's not always a bad thing. Because I feel like sometimes when we say that, it's like you've gone to the wrong place, you're not supposed to be there, blah blah blah. But it's sometimes it's a good thing because it leads you to an opportunity, or it leads you to a person who is really really good for you. And so I've just learned about like the importance of giving God all the glory for the things that happen, just because it's one because people like to say, oh, that's just a coincidence, like God had nothing to do with it. But it's like, no, God had everything to do with it, and I'm choosing to give God the glory because that is what God deserves. And so, yeah, that was an important lesson that I learned. The fifth lesson that I learned is from the song Reckless Love. And I'm going to do a song inspiration from Reckless Love. I think it's going to come out next week. But the song Reckless Love talks about the reckless love of God. And the thing that I've learned from that is just to try and emulate the love of God. That has been so important for me, like to be able to give people grace and to give people the kind of grace that I would expect to be given. Um, that has been such an important lesson to me because I feel like sometimes for myself, like I do things a certain way and some things are common sense to me. And I forget that it's not common sense to everybody and not everyone is going to think like me. And so what I learned was to be very like patient with people, and more than being patient is to just forgive them for doing things that offend me because sometimes they don't know that it's offending me. And so it was so important to learn how to like to keep learning how to forgive people, how to be okay with people doing things that offend me. And not to say that I should let anyone walk all over me. Like if someone offends me, of course you should be like, nah, I didn't like what you did. But then sometimes, like after we've said it, we're still angry. Like, why are you angry? You've already said it. And then whether or not they choose to take it and use it, and if they repeat the same thing, then that's a problem with them, and maybe you're not supposed to be in their lives. But if you tell them this is how I feel about this, and then they listen and they don't do it again, then you know that that's a person who truly like deserves to be in your life. But my point was just to give people grace, and to be forgiving. That was like a very important lesson that I learned. Then a sixth lesson that I learned also was about like not everyone needs to be in your life forever. Like that has been such an important lesson. Like some people are only in your life for a season. Some people are only in your life to teach you something. Like some people are only in your life to, I don't know, sometimes you fall into situations that you're not even supposed to be in. And so that's like the importance of bringing everything to God. But my sixth lesson was not everybody is supposed to be in your life forever, and it's okay to be okay with that. Don't keep holding on to things too strongly because sometimes they're not supposed to stay in your life like that. A seventh lesson that I learned um, was about um, just living a life of service to others, being the kind of person who wants to serve other people, and even when you don't want to do it, just trying to force yourself to do it anyway. For anyone that knows me, like honestly, I feel like I'm putting myself on blast, but anyone that knows me knows I don't generally enjoy being in the kitchen and cooking and stuff like that. But during this whole quarantine season, I've tried to just be like making pancakes and making like mandazis and making, just making like snacks stuff for my family. Um, that has been like the biggest step in my whole life. Like I know it sounds small, but oh my God, that has been the biggest step I have ever made. Like I can't even explain it. It's so, like I've just yeah. So that's an example of something I have done, but you can do it in any other way. Like if your mom had been telling you like water those plants, you could just water them and do it, make it like a weekly thing. Just living a life of service. It makes you happy. Sometimes you don't want to do it, to be honest, but then if we follow everything that our body wants, truly, I don't think we can prosper. So I think sometimes you have to actually just push yourself to do good things for others, and to not only think about yourself, because we're so used to thinking about ourselves and thinking we're entitled and like we deserve things. But sometimes like it's best to live for the sake of somebody else. And so that's a very important lesson that I learned. um Another lesson that I learned was including God in all aspects of my life. And that has been for me very important, because like when I wake up in the morning, when we're young, we're always being told, yeah, you need to say a prayer when you wake up in the morning. There's even like a song that we're taught when we're younger. I don't know, when we're like when we're in kindergarten or something like that, we're taught a song about like praying in the morning. I don't remember. But yeah, if you know that song, just comment down below, because I don't remember. But I know there's a song. Oh, it was something like read your Bible, pray every day. So nice, such a nice song. Anyway, so just the importance of including God in all aspects of your life. And it can be in very, very small things, like, oh God, I'm going for this walk. I pray that as I walk, you can just guide me to like a place that you need me to be, or something like that, just things like that. Just like reporting to God and telling God everything that you're going to do. Even when you're eating, you're like, oh God, I'm eating this food. I hope that it gives me nutrients and stuff like that. And it's been so important because, like, I feel like sometimes we think something is too small for God, or something is too big. Okay, no, nothing is too big for God, please. I don't think anyone thinks like that. But sometimes we think something is too small to take to God. But it's not too small, because like if you're trying to have a relationship with somebody, then like you want them to see your heart and stuff like that. And so that entails like just telling them everything that you're doing and stuff like that. So that was an important lesson to me. And I'm on the ninth lesson. So the ninth lesson that I learned is everyone's relationship with God is different, and that's okay. You don't all have to be like doing the same thing. Like for someone, maybe they feel very close to God when they listen to music. For someone else, it could be journaling. For someone else, it could be like praying and stuff like that. And of course, all these things like we should be doing. But then, what actually connects somebody to God, what connects people to God sometimes is very different. Like sometimes someone says, hey, when I listen to this song, I really feel like I'm in the spirit. But if I listen to the song, maybe I won't feel like I'm in the spirit. So it's just one of those things. Everyone's relationship with God is different, and that's okay. And the 10th lesson that I learned is that the way we live our lives is a testimony of God in our lives. And so that has been important to me, because I feel like sometimes we want to talk about God and we want to tell everybody, oh, God exists, and we want to be like, yeah, I believe in Jesus. Sorry. I'm like, yeah, I believe in Jesus and stuff like that. But then the way you live your life is completely opposite from what the teachings say. It's completely opposite from a person who like believes in Jesus. And so it's very confusing, because if you're telling somebody something and then you're telling someone one thing, but then the way you live your life is so opposite from it, like even the person looks at you and they're like, ah, yeah, is this how those people are? Because what you are is like you're you're like a walking example of God's love in this world. And so if you see yourself as that, then you realize that the way you live your life is such a big lesson to many people. And sometimes you don't even know that you're like sending anything to anybody. Sometimes you're actually just living your life and you're trying to get by. Your life is even feeling like it's falling apart. Then someone sends you a message and they're like, oh, you really inspire me and stuff like that. And you're just like, wow, but I haven't done anything, that kind of thing. So that's just an example, but the point was like the way you live your life is so important, and just make sure that you're being intentional with the way you're living your life, with the things that you're saying, the things you're watching, the things you're listening to, and just stuff like that. Like just be very intentional with it, because at the end of the day, you are like walking with God, and so when anyone sees you, then they should be like seeing God in you. So I've decided to do like 10 lessons. So those were 10. I really hope they were. Those are 10 lessons that I've learned and that have helped me with my walk with God. And I hope this teaches you something. If you have more lessons that I haven't mentioned, you could just comment down below lessons that you've learned, lessons that you're learning, everything that's happening, just stuff like that. Just comment down below. And if there's something that you absolutely agree with, comment as well. Like, I really, really want to know. Yeah, and if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, share with everybody that you know, and I'll see you next time in the next video. Bye.